Welcome to Deconversations, a rather excellent podcast if you're listening, and a webinar if you're watching, discussing all things related to medical devices decontamination. Brought to you by Dan Kuhl, the instrument maker, Matthew Pescott, entrepreneur and former sterile services manager, and Pavel Sternberg-Stylovsky, a research and development engineer.
Welcome everybody to this very exciting Christmas edition of Deconversations, and we're delighted to welcome some very special guests today who have joined us all the way from the USA. So we have Hank and Mike from Beyond Clean with us, who you will see are looking very, very festive. And obviously, my colleagues Pavel and Matthew also joining us. We're all making a bit of an effort with the clothing. This tinsel's quite itchy, but we'll go with it. So the idea of this Christmas episode is everyone has brought a Christmas wish with them, be it a sterile processing Christmas wish or something related to surgical instruments. But just very quickly, Hank and Mike, if you wouldn't mind just giving us a brief introduction for you guys and before we proceed, please.
Okay. Yeah, well, thank you all for the invitation to join you on the show. I'm a huge Deconversations fan, and as Dan said, I'm with Beyond Clean, one of the co-founders of our weekly podcast, and we do a lot of global sterile processing education.
Fantastic.
And
That's great.
I'm Mike Matthews, and I'm excited for this. I haven't been a guest on a podcast since the first episode of Beyond Clean. So this will be a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Absolutely. We are absolutely delighted that you are guys here. And I'm also delighted that we have this sort of festive theme about it. And it's going to be hopefully something slightly different. Dan, over to you.
Well, yeah, it's certainly going to be different because I've got tinsel around my neck, and apparently Pavel's got the fire burning behind him. So there's all sorts going on. We're all feeling a little bit hot under the collar, but let's kick off. Matt, Mike, I'm pleased with your introduction there. Obviously, you must have been a pro at podcasts because you then were brought into the team at Beyond Clean. So no pressure,
Yes.
but we expect big things there. Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. Well, I'm good at disappointing, so yeehaw.
Okay, right. Mike, could you start us off, please? Can we have your Christmas wish?
Yeah, absolutely. So my sterile processing related Christmas wish is that I wish there was better data to support the impact that sterile processing has on patient outcomes. Now, we've talked about this on the show a little bit, and it is a point of dramatic contention that in the grand world of peer-reviewed journals, and there are literally, thousands and tens of thousands of these papers that are out there, that so few that are specific to surgical outcomes have anything to do with sterile processing. In fact, Beyond Clean's chief medical officer, Dr. Peter Nickel, did some research on this, and I can't remember the exact numbers that he said, but it was something like, out of all the thousands and thousands of papers related to surgical outcomes, only about, I think, 60 or 70 even mentioned sterile processing at all. And then how many really got into the depths of sterile processing was something like less than a dozen. And I did my own little research on that, and I was able to find, I think, about 8 papers that really dove into sterile processing and the impacts it can have negatively on patients when things are not done well. And it's crazy, in like the 8 papers where they really actually went into sterile processing, in all 8 cases, it was something related to the reprocessing of instruments. So it's like when they look, it's 100% there, but nobody's really looking. So we come back with this attitude very frequently from administrators or decision makers that says, well, there's no data. Well, not doing the research is not necessarily the same as saying it's safe, right? So those two things don't line up. And I think regardless of what else is on our Christmas wish list, the biggest challenge is getting it approved, right? So there's tons of great tools that are already in existence, but how do you get it approved when the administrators are sitting there saying, prove it that it matters?
Sure. No,
This is an absolutely critical point, and ever since I started following Beyond Clean, which was quite early on, I think it was episode 2 that I first captured, and I've been with you ever since. This is a subject that really keeps coming back every time, because for every technology, for every idea that we think of, you're absolutely right. There is always a question. Well, so what? You came up with this, and what's the impact? And this is really something that I'm sort of supporting this wish 100% to see how we can bring on board the proper research on a big scale, get the hospitals and the general health services involved in looking at data in such a way that we can actually get some answers and see some pointers into seeing what solutions, what directions, what management practices are showing us improvement in general for what is most important, which is the patient outcome. So yeah, definitely something that I would like to see in the new year. And one would hope that someone is going to get bored over Christmas, is going to watch us, and they'll think, "I'll write an article."
Well, that sounds like obviously an interesting lead on that, Pavel. And I was just thinking as you were talking, Mike, about occurrences of seeing that data. And I think, as you've raised, the only time I can think I can see it was I can recall when I see it was, I think, where a hospital had some fatalities, and it was traced back as a result to infections that had come from directly poor processed trays. So if the only time it's investigated is when there's a perceived issue, then what about all the positive times as well? Where sterile processing departments have performed absolutely brilliantly, and that could be 99% of the time. And if the only data you can find is negative, it doesn't, that doesn't really, it's no way fair. But yeah, I mean, and how do you have? What are the next steps for that?
Well, I mean, obviously, I think we need a lot more engagement from a pretty wide range of people. Like, we need physicians to take this up. We need microbiologists, pathologists to take these kinds of issues up, because ultimately, we can scream as loud as we want, but it just rings louder when the doctor is the one who starts screaming. And I think that we really need to begin making inroads into those groups if we want to see that kind of research being pushed through.
No, this is absolutely critical, and I was also thinking now that we, Daniel, sort of looking at how you framed it, that we don't see those positive sides, and I think that the sort of sharing the positive outcomes, sharing the positive case studies is also one of the easiest and best ways to teach and learn at the same time, because you can see what others are doing really well, especially if they have very good results. And provided things are measured properly and we can actually track and trace the improvements, this is a fantastic tool to spread knowledge, to show people how things are done when everything is measured and everything is done properly. So I would very much like to see more and more case studies being done and show some success stories, because I think that this sort of I would say passive waiting for something really bad to happen so we can have a case study is probably not a very it's not a proactive way of looking at things, and I would definitely like to be on the positive side of that.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Well, Christmas presents are positive, aren't they? So normally, I suppose, depending on what, I haven't unwrapped mine yet. I'm not holding very high hopes, but we'll see.
If I can just tag on something to that just real quickly, that a big part of that is telling sterile processing professionals that what you do really does matter. What you do does affect the patient. And that's kind of the positive outcome that I think can come from that, is say, hey, every time you're checking that instrument as thoroughly as you should be, look, this is the impact that it has. And, I don't think there's any better gift that you can give to a sterile processing technician than to say, yes, you matter. Yes, what you do matters, and it does affect patients. Here's the proof.
Well, this is, yeah, absolutely correct. It's an interesting thing because in the latest episode with our friends from Belgium, Nancy was saying about the fact that on side by side with education, we also need motivation for sterile services technicians, and I think that those positive case studies are absolutely wonderful because they show people how things are done greatly, and this is showing appreciation for someone's hard work, because this is really everything that we do is someone's hard work, and if we can show that this hard work really pays off, this is definitely a motivational tool, and I think it can work wonders. Sorry,
Sure.
Daniel.
Matthew, let me bring you in quick.
No, it was just a quick point about sort of the sterile services staff or CSSD staff realizing their value. When I was back in sterile services back in the day, we had a very forward-thinking theatre educator, and she decided that all theatre staff, as part of their education, had to come and spend a week in sterile services, watching how trays were washed, packed, and processed. And every single one of those theatre nurses, once they became qualified, had a real strong understanding of what was done in sterile services. So I think theatres or operating theatres, are key in this. Also, if there is an opportunity for the like Michael was saying, the staff understanding what those instruments are for, that there's a patient at the other end of it, a possibility of staff going and seeing an operation, maybe from a viewing gallery or from obviously, but just to have a better understanding of what they do, as you say, is important.
Mike, we'll come back to your point, but I just thought, Matthew, there's quite a good time there to jump into your Christmas wish, which was around education, wasn't it?
Yes.
Don't be too controversial and end up on the naughty list, because you're only a few days away. You're nearly over the line.
Well, I would have worn my Grinch hat, but that's in the cleaners. No, I'm just concerned moving forward that there are certain commercial companies, especially large corporate companies, that are jumping on the education bandwagon to promote their products. And my concern is that in CSSDs that they're being greeted open-armed because it's just easy for the big boys to do the education for them. And what concerns me moving forward, and this is why I think I think Beyond Clean is such a fantastic forum, is that if they're the only ones offering education, then it would be educating the SSD managers of the future just to believe in their products and not the broad spectrum of products that are out there. And the IDSC have quite a few subcommittees that have commercial individuals on, and my concern is that they're influencing those groups. So that was my wish, that moving forward we have more organisations like Beyond Clean, Eastwood Park, an educational centre in the UK, that they're very neutral, and we need more of this type of approach.
Okay, Matthew, just I'll of course bring in Hank, but I was just wanted to mention, because Helen Campbell, a previous guest, I think we put a similar question to her, and she felt that, I think we agreed at the time, it was a bit of a balancing act. But I'm interested to get the perspective of Hank and Mike on this, because obviously we've got very different healthcare delivery models, obviously private and public, whereas obviously you've got the majority private. But please, Hank, if you'd share your opinion on this, please.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting comparison and contrast between Michael's wish and Matthew's wish, and I think it goes to part of the subject matter expertise conversation, because what Mike was referencing and what we've seen too few of is there's not enough users in the industry that are creating these studies and these research to drive the industry forward. Like, we look out there, and the few ones that are being written, the few white papers and case studies are being done, they're all being sponsored by manufacturers, right? And so they all have a particular angle. And that goes back to the education piece, I think, that Matthew's bringing up. But I'll even take like one step back and say, are we educating our facility technicians and managers on how to do research, how to create a case study, how to write a white paper, so that they are as prepared as these microbiologists, as these validation scientists out in these other corporate entities, that, you know, that's their job, is to create research, to make an argument, you know, to form education that matches up with the products they're selling. So that's step number one. Like, we need to be equipping and training these users on how to think scientifically, how to write scientifically. Not everyone has to do that, right? But there's going to be a handful of folks in the industry to help us do that. Now, number two, and this is an interesting, you know, this is the balance that we try to play every day beyond clean, and it is a balance, you know, to your point about Helen's comments. I would argue, I think, you know, coronavirus has even shown us this, that before, you know, there was kind of this idea, well, you know, science is science, you know, there's only one way to view science, and it's the right way. Well, we've seen through Corona that, oh man, even the most clear science you would think would be so easy to understand, and everyone would agree with, you know, what the risk is, what the answer is, what the solution is. Like, there's just all these battles. Well, the same thing is true in sterile processing, that I'm not sure there is such a thing as neutral education, but what we try to support is a neutral platform to have a conversation about the differences and the nuances around education. To really, Matt, I think this is what you're getting at. You know, if you're only hearing it from one voice, from one perspective, and you think, well, that's the only perspective out there, that must be true. You know, yeah, you're only getting half the story. And so the challenge is, yeah, try to bring users in, but then also try to bring in all the diverse perspectives from industry to say, yeah, there is disagreement here, and these are the important things to consider. And then you make your decisions from the user standpoint.
This is absolutely fantastic, and I think that the word platform that you brought up here is critical, because this platform is democratizing this to a level that, you know, at the end of the day, we are all commercial. We run companies, we come up with solutions, and everyone is trying to put the best ideas and the best solutions forward. But you're absolutely right in saying that what we need is a place where you can actually throw those ideas, and then you actually start making a more of a balanced choice of what you are going to use. It's not just a single source of information and a single solution, but you have this sort of broader understanding and this aspect of sharing knowledge as well. So you are confident enough to put it out there and for people to debate one or the other solution. And I think that this is also how we all learn from it, because that's also where good ideas are coming from, of combining different products, working together, and more than that, even between different companies collaborating. I think that, you know, you don't have to look far. You know, there are companies who are working together just because they found this sort of common ground. And I think that having a platform that introduces those new ideas is also a great sort of matchmaking system that allows more people to work together and come up with even better solutions and systems. So this is actually excellent.
No, that's, I mean, that's great. Really interested by your first point, Hank, about giving people the skills. And when we were just moving house, actually, I was going through some old study books and found a couple of very basic sort of study skills, statistical analysis books, and that sort of stuff starts to, even learning at a basic level starts to make you understand how you can look at trends and look at data. But without teaching people how they can do that, how can we possibly create a culture where it's going to be the norm to look for that data or to be trending positive information around low infections and that sort of stuff? So I think that's really exciting, and ticking off my own probably Christmas wish, really, which was around better education in surgical instruments, which it all ties in. I think it's about changing the overall perspective of how we deliver it, which I think, Hank, I've said a few times. I think this can be a global thing that we can deliver on education, whether it is instrumentation or how to run with data. I don't know if you'd have anything to add to that, Hank.
I think the approach that has been taken traditionally to education, to Matthew's point again, is how do we educate in order to sell this product? But we're getting to the place now in our industry, to your point, Dan, that there's a hunger for education on, okay, I've already bought the product, or it's a similar product as what I already own. But now what I want to know is all the nuance. Why is the instrument made out of this material and not a different material? Like, why is this instrument, does it have to be cleaned in this certain way and only sterilized in this modality and not another modality? Like, those are the questions now that the industry is starting to ask. And finally, we're starting to see more and more manufacturers wake up and say, so this doesn't help me sell my product, but it helps my users clean and disinfect and sterilize my product more efficiently, which goes back to Michael's point, which is it helps us not create headlines or end up in case studies, that show the breakdown in sterile processing. So as the industry wakes up, at the same time, we're seeing this revolution in social media and how we communicate around the globe and how we do so quickly and creatively, and all of that's coming together now. It's a pretty exciting time to watch it.
That's it. I mean, Mike, I managed to grateful to listen in on a couple of your educational webinars you did over the last few months. And how was the reaction to that? Because my personal reaction off the back of doing things like Deconversations has been really positive. People are ready to suck up the information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, education has sort of like this altruistic nature to it. And I think that companies are finding that there is an expectation from their customer that you're going to provide some value to them beyond just the service or the product that you sell, right? And the sort of the easiest go-to for that is education that is related to that product, right? And that's most of where the education that I've developed stems from. And because of that, it makes it, it's almost a dirty word to use, but it's almost like there's this marriage between education and marketing as a result. And to Matthew's point, like, there's a point where one can definitely overpower the other. And I think we've all seen presentations that are like that. And, I think that ultimately the only true solution for that is developing those critical thinking skills in people, because the last thing that you want is a manager or a technician just sitting there like a blank slate, just absorbing everything that's being said to them and accepting it because it's education, quote unquote.
100%.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. But I mean, I've seen it at conferences where certain presentations that may be commercial, people in the crowd, they've paid their money to go and see that, and they do take a lot of it as gospel. But
yeah,
I think you're right. I think you've got to you've just got to be generic, really. And we've tried to stick to those rules with this podcast particularly, because otherwise I think people wise up to that nowadays. But yeah, Matthew, does that satisfy your Christmas wish a little bit?
Yeah, no, it's a relief that there are like-minded individuals out there that share my concerns, and it's all about a balancing, to give everybody a fair chance at sort of promoting their products, but like you said, in an educational way, but educating the customer that there are different options. I mean, I'd almost be tempted when I'm selling one of my products is to say, well, look, this is what's available. I believe mine is the best, but you could use this, and this is what this does. You could use this. So so it gives them an idea of what's available, and the like you were saying earlier, that they do go into these things sort of with a blank slate, and then if it's the wrong company filling in the dots, it just concerns me that I've had conversations with customers where they've obviously been convinced by an argument, but they haven't heard both sides of the argument. Now I know I'm going off piste a bit, but this is the same with education. I've interestingly never been invited to any of these corporate presentations under the banner of education to do any sort of presentation, because as Dan said, I do all my presentations totally non-commercial. I talk about the product, but there's no reference to the company, the names of the product, and I talk in generic terms. And as Dan said, when we set up this Deconversations, we were very it was important to us that it was about education, and it was about having to chat about the issues.
Well, and let me add in there, I think the credibility piece is very important, and this goes back, to what we were saying earlier too. But our audience, like your audience, and the Beyond Clean audience, the people in sterile processing, nobody in there is stupid. So if the audience feels like they're getting sold to, they're going to know that they're getting sold. But an important piece of it is also being cognizant and aware, to your point of who do we bring to the table? Like, are we going to bring a competitor that we know has a difference of opinion, right? And allow them that platform that I mentioned earlier to speak their opinion, to our audience. So we get that question all the time, So like, how do you manage if somebody says something on your podcast that's incorrect? Well, it happens every day. To Mike's point, our purpose is not to be Big Brother and control the conversation so people can only say certain things, and it has to be like everything has to be fact checked a million times before it goes out. No, like these are people who are out there talking and educating already. We're giving them a platform, and we're letting the audience decide, what they walk away from. But it does go back again, to that critical thinking piece. That not, like when we say critical thinking, we're not presuming or assuming that anyone out there, doesn't already have it. I think all of us could improve our critical thinking skills and be able to catch the nuances. And is that true? Is it half true? Like, why are they saying this at this point? All those things come in to building a platform of conversation that can push us forward. And I'll just add, one more thing. The phrase that we like to use at Beyond Clean is we're a part of a revolution. And anytime there's a revolution, there's a traditional model up here that's getting broken up. And that traditional model goes back to your point, Matt, about the controlling of the conversation, the almost, universal perspective on certain topics in our industry. And that has been the traditional model. When you break that up, there's a lot of things that kind of started flux, like people are like, well, who do I listen to now? Like, what is your angle? Because I was trusting this angle. And that goes back again and again and again with, I think, being transparent with the conversation and why you're having it and what you want your audience to get out of it.
Yeah. No, I agree totally with that approach. I think what we're asking for is transparency through education, and certainly when I've done anything over the last few months, it's been open to all, really. And I think you start to discredit it if you're pick and choosing. Look, I want to let's mix it up a bit now, and we've been talking about education now. But Hank, could you please present your Christmas wish to us? And obviously, this is slightly different subject away from what we've been talking about.
Yeah, sure. If I can concentrate with Papa's cat.
So I brought a helper over here just in case.
They just know. They just know. So. I've got
so I'll go quick. There you go. There you go. My wish is that sterile processing departments could better utilize smart devices in their departments. And this, goes to the consumer world. Like a lot of us are getting smart devices for Christmas, or have over the last couple of years. If it's Alexa, if it's the Google Play or whatever they call those little things on your smartphone. If you're Apple, then you have Siri. But in sterile processing, there hasn't yet been a huge step toward the smart device perspective in how we do our jobs. But it could be something as simple as, hey, Alexa, how many cases do we have that are still going? Or hey, Siri, how many staff do I need tomorrow to support the surgical volume, right? And there's calculations that are being done based on our own data. So there's like very simple things where the data, I think, is already there in most cases. It's in our tracking system, it's in historical documents and everything else. We just need app designers to put it together in a smart device type of setting that could help us, even if it's just buying us time, rather than the manager having to stop what they're doing in the middle of the work floor, go back to the office, open up the schedule, see who's on the schedule tomorrow, a quick question to a smart device, could really increase that level of confidence, not only for the managers, but also for frontline technicians to ask, quick questions about IFUs, about the schedule, of course, about the workflow. So that would be my wish. I don't know what that would look like, practically speaking, but hopefully you guys are smarter than me. You can help me figure it out.
It's good. Let's have some ideas, Pavel. I'm sure you've got.
This is great, because this very much goes in line with the introduction of simple things like even tablets, where you have all of your IFUs available. So rather than sort of relying on people remembering things, that you have a very quick way of accessing information, and this is something that I absolutely love what you said about working in a smart way, because we have so much information that is required to run sterile services on a daily basis. If you think about all of the different IFUs, the processes that you have on your machines, and making sure that the right instrument goes through the right process and so on, it would be fantastic if we had this very, very simple aid that would help people just run it correctly, because we cannot just simply rely on people remembering everything every single time. And I think this is also slightly connected with the educational model we have and how we live at the moment. That at the moment, for every question you have, you can just quickly type it in Google, and you'll get 5 million answers for it, which is slightly problematic. But at the same time, I think that in sterile processes, there's definitely space for those clever devices that will help cutting down time, cutting down inefficiencies, and giving you that one hint that you need there and then to perform your task properly. And going even further than that, imagine if you could link this with your overall quality control system where you would be able to see, track, and follow things and see how it's all sort of interlinked. So we are going again back to the question of how we manage data, and we have to do it in a smart way. So it's helpful because we can drown very easily under the sheer weight of data. But if we learn how to use it in a clever way, this is going to be helpful. And the easiest way to do that is, as Hank, as you say, is use clever devices that are going to be able to help you with that.
Yeah, and I think this really does affect patient outcomes if we go all the way back, because what is happening when a sterile processing technician is in decontam, they're in full PPE, they're up to their elbows in bioburden, and they think to themselves, what is the soak time for this flexible scope that I'm doing right now? Is it different because this is an ultrasound scope? Well, are they really going to pull off their PPE and go, look through the IFUs? Are they really going to, scroll through a computer screen while they're in their PPE and contaminating everything? No, what happens is it just doesn't get done. They make an assumption and, they say, oh, well, I don't think it's different. Surely it's not different. And so they don't treat it any differently. And turns out actually it was, all because of that accessibility piece that I think this is really getting at, that because the information wasn't accessible at the time that they needed it, it just simply didn't get utilized.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the reasons, for example, why I've been following very closely the developments on smart glasses, for example, because this is one of those little simple devices that every single person could wear and have all of that information almost at your fingertips. Still, I think the technologies that we have available are not yet mature enough to do that. And I think that there is also one of the critical elements is that we haven't yet transferred all of the data to be accessible in a simple way, because we are sort of used to simply writing documents, and maybe documents are not the easiest forms to be provided through those smart devices. So I think that this is something that I am sure that more technology is going to come into sterile services, and we are going to see those clever ideas coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So Pavel, so how obviously, and I think just taking off some of Hank's first comments, an easy step forward would be to perhaps as a manufacturer, right? I mean, things like Alexa for reading out IFUs, go to page such and such, or so is there certain things that manufacturers could be doing to make that more transferable?
I think it's the question of how you frame the question in general, and how would you ask for the information to be given to you? Because it's absolutely useless. You won't remember what page from a 300-page IFU the Alexa should read, and if she starts reading from the beginning, it's going to be a long time until you get to a point when it's going to offer you the solution that you want. So I think it's a little bit like with the optimization of online material for the ease of searching. So you also have to have that in the back of your mind when you are writing your articles, that they need to be quite easy to scan and pick up information by robots and algorithms. So that helps you then, or helps artificial intelligence or whatever algorithm to sort of understand what you are really asking for, because that I think is the critical barrier that we need to break. But I'm absolutely sure that the technologies are coming that will be able to do that. We just have to sort of think how we can, in a clever way, use them.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, that's really interesting. Hank, does that make you, slightly more inspired around your Christmas wish?
It does. Well, the most inspiring thing is through podcasts like these, I have met some brilliant folks in the industry who are thinking about all kinds of different topics like this. Like we're focused on education mainly through Beyond Clean. But, there are folks out there thinking about the app world and about how to develop skills, for Alexa, for instance. And there's even companies, I believe, Hugh Freedy in the dental space has created a couple of app skills for Alexa and other smart devices that the dental providers can ask, and then it'll pull up certain information, from their company. So there's folks already in our industry, already doing certain things like this. So I know we're not too far behind, even though it might still be another 5 years or so before we really start seeing it blossom.
Absolutely.
Very,
And
very
one thing that we would
exciting.
need over here, and I think that is really important for the future of this conversation, we really need to get people in the field engaged and tell them that something like that is coming, and get them sort of on the forefront so they actually look at those solutions and they support those who are already in this space trying to come up with systems. So we get the solutions that are better researched and work better from day one.
Great, but that's the reason why we do this sort of thing, so we can hopefully link up with like-minded people who have got can hopefully help us with those solutions. Look, Pavel, I know you wrote your Christmas list early, and you've been dying to share with us your Christmas wish. So please go ahead.
So my great wish for this Christmas and the whole year is that we automate more processes and optimize them in such a way that we get the best outcome out of them, because we still have a tremendous amount of simple, very repetitive tasks, and there is automation already there that could substitute them. And when we use automated processes, especially those that are controlled by electronics, we usually have repeatability of those processes at a very high level, and we can then make sure that every time something is done, it's done to a certain standard. And once we optimize it, we can also know that this standard is what we really need. This is what goes in line with the regulations, with the requirement. So automating processes for the sake of making your life easier. So this very much goes in line with what Hank was asking about, using technology to make your work easier and simpler. And by automating processes, we can definitely achieve that. And just make our lives easy or easier.
Mm-hmm.
So what sort of processes could be automated in your opinion? And guys, I'd be interested to have your feedback on this as well.
From my perspective, anything from wrapping sets through organizing sets. You can look at either robotics or automated system that could do it. Automated systems for tracking and tracing of instrumentation. Look at the simple things like better processes for cleaning and disinfection of instruments. We are still relying very heavily on manual processes, but we can be quite clever about how we design those processes so we improve the overall quality of what gets reprocessed, and just we sort of focus on technology to do the heavy lifting, to do this most difficult part of work. And we, as human beings who can comprehend a little bit more in the grand scheme of things, we can actually look at the process from the top down and come up with ideas how to make it better, how to make it more efficient, rather than it's this sort of age-old question of working on your skills or looking at how you can actually improve it, not only focusing on the job, on that manual aspect of what you're doing, but actually step back and think about how you can automate it and make your life easier. So this is my big wish for this Christmas.
Brilliant.
Yeah, what I would add on that is the fear in our industry when we talk about automation is always, well, does that mean that you're going to get rid of the people? And I know, I think you made a good point there, Pavel. I don't talk to a lot of sterile processing professionals who feel like they have enough time to get all the work done that they have to do every day. Usually it's the opposite. We just can't catch up. We're always behind. We can't get to these other projects that need to get done because we're just trying to focus on getting through the day. What automation gives you is it gives you that time back, that time to breathe, that time to think, that time to be proactive instead of reactive. And that's really, like, I want to encourage folks out there, you know, who hear this, they might immediately say, oh, no, like, we don't want to change that. No, this is good for you because it gives you all that other freedom and flexibility to really do the things to raise up our industry rather than trying to keep the status quo from burning down.
Yeah, and that's a really important key piece of education there that has to go through, because every time we do have this conversation, it does go back to, oh no, the robots are going to take all of our jobs. And, you know, and that has happened in history many, many times. You know, you think about the Luddites when it came to cloth making. And of course, you know, I hope other people get this reference, but you know the story of John Henry. You know, John Henry was a man. He was the guy who I can't remember the rest of the song, but it's basically like he was the railroad worker, and the steam engine came to town, and the steam engine could push railroad spikes faster than a human could. And so John Henry challenged the steam engine, and, you know, long story short, he beat the steam engine, but he died in the end, and the steam engine won anyway. So it's all about it's this historical allegory about the move from manual processes and eliminating jobs to automated processes. And I think that a lot of people miss the point of the story. In my opinion, the point of the story is John Henry shouldn't have never fought it, because he could have instead partnered with the steam engine. He could have been the one running the steam engine. But instead, he fought it. Yeah, he won, but he died. That wasn't necessary. So this is a historical challenge that comes up repeatedly. And at the end of the day, automation does win, and it does make things better. So why fight it?
This is an absolutely fantastic example, and I was just thinking about what we started a conversation earlier on with Hank mentioning that he is watching Bake Off, and if you think about what you have in your kitchen today, how many tasks were automated so your life is easier, so you can focus on being creative? You have a dishwasher, you have a KitchenAid, you have a freezer. You know, a couple of 100 years ago, you didn't have any of those. You had a pit in the ground with a piece of ice in it, and every time you wanted to keep something cold for a little bit longer, you have to go out. Even simple things like washing dishes or preparing food. At the moment, you can focus on being creative. That's why today you can make dishes from cuisines from all over the world, because you have tools that make it so simple and easy. Mm-hmm. So you are not today thinking, when am I going to get fire or electricity to cook my meal? You are thinking what sort of ingredients you are going to use, how clever you can be with that. And this is, I think, the critical element. We didn't stop cooking. We just enjoy it at the moment. It's not a chore. It's something that you enjoy. And I think that, going back to the conversation about education and motivation, if you can have, people understanding what sort of an impact their work, their creativity at work does for the patient outcome, why can't we not be creative? Why can't we not just let automation do those simple tasks so we can be focusing on making it better? It's as simple as that, I think.
It sounds very simple and a very nice wish to have for Christmas, Pavel. Guys, I think we've all had our input there on our Christmas wishes. Was there any other thoughts that you had that have come up from these discussions around these wonderful Christmas wishes?
I have one straight away. This conversation on its own is inspirational, and I think we should have more of those. Share knowledge, bring other people to the table with different experiences. so we can discuss this, we can inspire each other to come up with better systems, better solutions. So just a simple chat we have with a little bit of Christmas fun over here, but the subjects that we were discussing are really important, and that the outcome of these conversations can change people's lives. So why don't we do this more often?
Agree.
Yeah.
I just want to add a shout out for all those sterile processing folks who are going to be working on Christmas. When the rest of us, get to be home with our families, and I know many of us on this call, have had to be the ones at the hospital on Christmas Day and other holidays, because that's what it means to be essential. I think now, this year we've all learned about all the other essential employees, but in the healthcare sector, we've always been essential. Snow doesn't matter, holidays don't matter. You're coming to the hospital because the patient needs you. And so, this has been a great conversation to talk about the future of our industry. But I just want to take that one little shout out and say, tomorrow on Christmas Day, we'll be thinking about you, and we'll be appreciating you for all that you do for us, not only on Christmas Day, but every day of the year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hear, hear.
And thank you very much for that hard work.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you all. And thank you very much to all of our listeners or watchers who take the trouble to tune into Deconversations. As Pavel added, we really hope we can have another conversation like this, maybe without the ridiculous hats and the tickly tinsel, which, as it turns out, every time I breathe moves like in the wind. But that's been a minor distraction. But thank you, guys. It's been excellent. I think we've had, just as a very brief summary, Mike, I think your data is really, really important. I can see how that directly links to everything. We're always demanding more resources for the sterile departments to develop. Well, without the data to prove the cases, to prove the positives from what we do, it's very hard. Matthew, along the educational lines, and which is a big passion of mine as well, was tied into my Christmas wish. And you guys with the automation and utilizing smart technologies, some really excellent stuff there. And I look forward to discussing it more in the future with you. So thank you very much, and have a wonderful Christmas, everyone.
Have a wonderful Christmas, everyone. All the best.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Take care.
Take care, guys. Bye.
Yeah.
You have been listening to Deconversations. Join us soon for new episodes.